Hello.
Hi guys.
Hey, can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, Adrian.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I know Clive said he had a conflict today. Is this also true for
Yeah.
Alejandro?
No, I think Alejandro also had a class today. I mean, they both had the same class. So yeah, it will be just me today.
Awesome. Okay. I did not get a response from David, so I'm guessing he's actually out of office these 2 weeks.
Could
Was
be.
the impression that I have. Did anyone talk to him for other reasons?
Nothing from my side.
No.
Okay. I'll assume that he wasn't there. Okay, so for this meeting, I was actually thinking since so many people are out that Stefan and I can go through our summarized thoughts of what we think are next steps, and then also the outline design of what we have. And then from there, others.
Oops.
We lost him.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's give him a couple of minutes.
Sorry
Hey,
about
Alex.
that. Hello?
No problem. Just checking the audio with you. No problem.
Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. It looks like moving through too many browsers too quickly. So I was saying, Stefan and I can present what we've summarized from previous meetings and our current design thinking in terms of the test suite. And for anyone who does have feedback on this meeting here, they can provide it. We can discuss it and also provide it in the doc. Otherwise, we can move this conversation to an asynchronous dialogue with the others. I also have a rough draft of kind of the user stories that I'm working with a documentation writer for in terms of developing a SGT standard site. And I can also give a few updates on some of my other conversations that I have right now on complementary standards to the serving spec as well. But so agenda will be going over this proposal, set of proposals, and then I can give updates on some of the other conversations I'm having. And if anyone has feedback or other ideas, we can keep on discussing from there.
Sounds good.
So I can share my screen as well. And essentially, we've outlined two proposal ideas that we think make sense within the SGT1, so the V2 inference specification from NVIDIA. And the first proposal is basically a two-part step process. One is on our side, so on SGT, and when I say our side, I mean the community, by the way. We build essentially the test spec and then test models, and then we have the protobufs in a script that will go through the order flow with the permutation of a specific model to verify against the V2 inference spec. So what this will look like is pulling the protobufs and then coding it into a Python script. And then we'll have these set models in a GitHub repo that the vendors or open source utilities can then load onto their model server on an endpoint. So we won't encapsulate everything in a CI testing suite. Instead, we'll give the environment that we'll run it within. And then we expect the vendor or the contributor to record their instructions. And then from there, they'll output the script's results. So the script's results would be something like it'll run several assertion tests. And then if it passes every single one of them, we expect a number of passes. And then from there, we'll create a folder structure with another GitHub repo where the vendor can contribute the results into the repo. So several pieces. The SGT community creates the test spec. The vendor runs the test. And then from there, they upload the results into a certification repo. And from there, we'll pull the vendors and the libraries that they've created with the results, and then we'll serve it into the badge creator system in GitHub. So you might see in a number of GitHub repos, they have the badge saying it's either like 99% passing for tests or other similar type of acknowledgements. And we'll do something similar for each specification as well. We have a few assumptions with this. And essentially it's first that it's an honor system for the vendor. We trust that they don't copy those results. And especially in the earlier stage, when there's a small number of organizations that comply against that specification, somebody in the community will probably step up and actually test to verify the end results so that it actually can be done in the vendor that says that they're compliant. And hopefully we have a large enough community where we can continue doing that, but at least in the beginning, we'll probably have like an honor system check as well. And another assumption that we have here is even though we specify a model framework library and the artifact compilation or saving method, we don't aim to be prescriptive with that. So for example, if PyTorch, I think they do like a PHT format as well, we can also offer that as another step. So we'll expose the training code within this test spec so that a vendor can actually get another version if their model binary serving layer doesn't use either what we provide or other common formats that are already offered to the community. I'm going to pause there. That's a lot of information. Any questions so far?
It generally makes sense, and I think it's better to first present two options and then discuss them in comparison because, I mean, it's best in contrast, I guess.
Stefan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, but just on a high level, yeah, that's a self-assessment tests with the most lean approach that we thought we can take to get started.
Do you want to share the second proposal, Stefan, or do you want me to do it as well?
Yeah, I can start and you can chime in. So the second one is more comprehensive, maybe a longer term vision. When the SGT maintains not only the tests and test suites, but also the CI system. And actually the CI system could be maintained on both sides, on the vendor side and in a SGT. But the kind of the golden one is it could be run on SGT side. It's basically the pulling the latest release, deploying a container, running the test suite, loading the models, doing all the health checks, and test requests. So just basically the full-blown integration CI system. And the vendor's responsibility here is basically follow these guidelines, and that's actually the first one that provided testing environment setup process. It should be like unified, but there is no any specific requirements there. It's just but there might be like different circumstances. Different vendors may use different deployment mechanisms. Somebody require just a Docker container. Somebody has the like Helm chart. Some others have their own specifics. So it's kind of, there are some unknowns there. In a simplest version is just a Docker pull and Docker run. Yeah, authentication and all the other kind of conventions. I would say there are a lot of conventions required for between vendor and SGT to make it work. eventually we may kind of get to this state. And yeah, so that's basically it. And of course, in a long term, we kind of, I believe we're on the same page that the test suite is going to be extended with the different functional tests, not only the contract test, the spec test, but also some like functional requirements are going to be added, discussed in the community and added to this test suite.
So just to summarize the difference, proposal 1 aims to be more lightweight, and it's essentially centered around testing the specification and having manual work on the vendor side to deploy the model, and then also have our test suite run. And then from there, there's another manual step of taking the results and then pushing it into the central repo where this can then be displayed for others to see. And then that gets passed back as kind of like a badge or certification that the vendor can use publicly. Proposal 2 expands upon the core ideas of the test suite and then puts it into a fully automated system. And this is partially taking ideas from Kubernetes and then partially also taking ideas from just what we've seen internally for different tools. It's essentially going above and beyond and creating an end-to-end pipeline, which between Stefan and myself, we think it's too complicated for what we have today. So we're proposing that the group look at proposal 1 and really center their ideas and feedback there. But we're happy to discuss both options if there's other alternative ideas that we're missing in this.
I think that makes sense. I mean, option 2 looks like a superset of option 1. And at the moment, we also need to do some work for option 1 to work. So I think it's worth being tactical. We'll start with proposal 1, and maybe as a North Star sort of thing, proposal 2 could be cool, as it could be seen as adding more value to SGT. But definitely it's worth, I think it's worth starting with option 1 first.
Yeah, that proposal 2 requires a lot of effort and resources we might realistically not possess, especially in the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah, and
We need
also
to
there
set
are
up infrastructure and have people and engineers to maintain it and run it. And realistically, we'll have technical issues, especially in the beginning, and we need people to work on them. That sounds expensive, at least.
there are also some blockers on option 2, like there is now no standard way of loading things into ML server and Triton. Like each one has like their own loading mechanisms. So
Right.
to say like we get the image and then we just load the model, that step could be quite complicated right now.
Yeah, that's actually a topic for another specification.
yeah, I was imagining that, like like extending the standard to also provide more or have more conventions, I guess.
When we have that conversation, feel free to loop me in. I am helping some open source projects that are being open sourced from an enterprise that's actually thinking about those type of things. Happens to also be what I worked on SageMaker, in case anyone forgot. The ideas that I've had around the CI testing is we could create a Kubernetes environment within the CI testing suite. So if you look at things like Circle CI, they have these ideas of orbs. Orbs are like reusable nodes within the workflow. From there, we can ask each vendor to provide their invocation, either manifest or their CRD. So the specification is out of scope for that invocation request. And that would just be like the boilerplate code that we would need to have to test for that vendor. But I agree overall, it's additional effort and work.
And to be honest, proposal 1 still looks kind of, well, in a good sense, pretty strict and robust compared to many other standards. Like HTTP itself is basically controlled by the team that implements it, and they run like no common tests as far as I know for HTTP. It's just a convention that people follow. So like having a test suite itself seems like a pretty, demandful and strict standard on our side compared to what I know about other standards commonly used in the market. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's definitely a good thing because it makes things more, structured and robust. But I think it's already a good step to make defined and commonly implemented standard, even without having our own environment for testing. If that makes sense.
I don't know enough about the history of HTTP. I know that for a long time, the OSI framework, so like the layers of the internet, has been around since like the 1970s, 1980s. And they talked a lot about that in academic circles before bringing it into industry. So I won't be able to comment too deeply on that. But I think that a test suite is what we need in the industry as a first step. And then from there, we can see how the industry reacts and responds.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, if there's no other comments, I'll pause the conversation here, and I can talk about some of the other rough ideas and rough sketches just for the community to provide feedback on. So another piece that Clive had mentioned and several others and I had been discussing is a specification and doc page. So the vision for this is intended to have, so if we go to, I can't see my bar right now because of the Zoom control panels. The goal was to have another tab right here that has specifications, and the specifications would take the user to like a markdown created site that looks probably common to what most people have for their open source libraries. And from there, there'd be a page with all of the different specifications that we currently have and are incubating. So the core user story for this is, as an ML engineer, I can view a documentation page for standards developed by the SGT community. So pretty straightforward, but specifically that ML engineer should be able to see several things. One, it's the rationale and history. So kind of the why and how we got here. And then the core specification. So that's what it is that we're actually doing. And then the information on compliance testing. So this would be the library that we just discussed for SGT1. And then information how to get involved for that specific specification. So in my conversations this past week, looks like there's one more. This group right here is talking about model deployment, but I've had conversations with other startup vendors and open source contributors on potential ideas for these other four. So model monitoring is between the endpoint inference binary to either an observability logging solution or a ML specific monitoring solution. So this would be data drift, concept drift within the model, and how the metrics are aggregated from the model binary down to the monitoring solution. Model metadata is around what MLflow would call a model signature, and then what GCP would call, I believe it was metadatum or schemata. And that's for the model binary, like what are the inputs and outputs. Essentially here, we don't have a specification in the industry yet, not privately or publicly from all the people that I've talked to, but there has been some interest to do kind of like a quote RFP process. And essentially we would have a placeholder on this documentation site that outlines what would be in scope for a specification. And these are things that different people can contribute to in docs over the summer. And then we would leave it there in terms of getting to a point where we can corral the buy-in to start filling in what are the different pieces of the outline. Model framework logging, I haven't seen any real framework do a great job with logging, except maybe PyTorch Lightning. They've really invested into like a logging system from within the framework training loops into the logging solution of your choice, whether that be weights and biases, MLflow, or other tools that are emerging in open source. And then finally, there feature store serving. So a little bit of what Willem is doing with the Feast work, but there's also other startups that have been in this and other people who have thought a lot about feature serving. So this documentation site really has several pieces. First, it's around the specification itself and really drilling into each one of these, kind of like being the corpus of knowledge on these specifications, and then the RFP process as well. The documentation site itself will be open in terms of open like the source code. So this will be on a GitHub, so people could contribute to it themselves, and then we would have a very lightweight CD system that would then deploy it to a static storage site. I was thinking of keeping it really simple, like a Sphinx documentation or another one of the tools that are lightweight and easy to set up. Like hopefully this is a one-day project to set up the infrastructure, and then from there people can iteratively improve the language and phrasing. Anyone have comments? I can also share this doc as well.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's good to
exciting,
see that
actually.
list. Oh, sorry, again.
Yeah, that's exciting because you always think about the big picture while focusing on like one spec. You think how it's going to be connected with other specs.
Exactly. It's really hopefully the conversation point. And when I try to go back down to the basics, I never thought of SGT being the or like myself being the person that defines all the standards. I want to just kick off the conversations because I know that a lot of this is free form and it's like what projects get adoption that ultimately drive it. So don't want to set too many guardrails, but do want to kind of like pull people back together to like think about the end to end rather than the individual pieces alone.
In
I don't have
terms of sorry, Alex, just a quick question. In terms of the priorities, what do you think could be the next priority? And obviously, we may have our opinion, but it's always good to ask customers what they're looking for and what type of standardization they need.
Yeah, so my thought on this in terms of tactical next steps would be create a documentation page and basically leave blank RFPs for the parties that have enough insight. So I'm talking to Allegro AI, I'm talking to like Grid AI. So they're the people behind PyTorch Lightning. If we have enough to codify an outline, then we put the outline in this doc. The outline does not mean the actual spec itself, by the way. It's a delineation of like what's in scope and what's not in scope. And then from there, I think we have an opportunity to talk about this in various podcasts. So I see Demetrius on the line, looking at you right now. There's also opportunity to talk about this in different conference sites and see where there is interest in terms of like the feedback. I've at this point like put my email like very openly on a lot of the different pages and the sites. The goal is for people to just reach out and start a conversation around it, and we'll see from there. I do also expect to like take this directly to some certain enterprises that I know are more sophisticated, but this always becomes a problem of where is the community talking about? And the community is very loosely defined. It's community of interested parties, and then community of practitioners, and then there's so like the ML engineers, and then there's the actual like platform builders, vendors, open source, and let's call it the ML platform teams. It's kind of like getting a little bit of each to really get it going within each one of these. So my approach for this right now is there's a little bit of interest for each one of them. Why don't I just put this all out and see what lands, with the expectation that we can be ready to accelerate any one of these that have the interest and buy-in to get alignment, at least within the vendor and external community. Did anyone else have a question or comments?
I'm trying to make sense. Very clear.
Yeah, it would be great if you could keep us up to date with the progress on these different RFPs. I know that, I mean, from the Solon side, we would be very interested on the monitoring and metadata ones, but also on, I mean, because those are things that we directly or indirectly develop, but also on the framework login and feature store serving, because, well, deployment and serving is very dependent on those. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think on
I
the
agree.
framework login point, yeah, I mean, well, also the metadata point. I mean, you already mentioned them, but it would also be great to involve, or I'm not sure if you're talking already with the MLflow team.
I have a contact from right when I was leaving AWS. We had exchanged a few emails, but we never got a setup. It's been on my to-do list this week to reach back out to them, just because I had been speaking with the Grid AI folks about framework logging last week. So it's top of mind for me to reach back out to them.
Yeah, no, this is pretty cool, and it's great to see the full list of protocols that you're looking to establish.
Yeah, I think it's going to be iterative, and we'll continue getting buy-in and traction over time. I think getting this documentation set, I think, will be the first real major piece of credibility building. Right now, a lot of the ideas are in Google Docs, and in these discussion meetings, is trying to actually like expand the content and get this into like a page where people can asynchronously jump in. If you guys have observed on these meetings, we actually have a good number of people that have come in, but a lot of them also churn out just because it's so hard to understand and like dive into a lot of these specifications and be able to like add value to the conversation. Hopefully this becomes a way that people can start onboarding onto the different concepts and ideas behind this different stage of MLOps. Kind of like what Dimitri is doing for the podcast, except we're being like very specific on how the tools integrate together rather than like the MLOps journey. Awesome. So I think that's all I have to cover. I feel like there was something else, but the solid 30 minutes seems reasonable. I'm going to move this meeting also to bi-weekly from now on. So that means every other week, just to keep the cadence a little bit more manageable, especially as some of these other working groups start popping up. That way I'm not slammed by these on my calendar as well. But I really want to encourage that we just keep the dialogue going over the Google groups and Slack, or over like one-on-ones in between. That way we can keep on going with the conversation. So my expectation for those who have not attended is that they put comments on the testing tool docs. I sent this out in the Google group already, and hopefully we can get a little bit more feedback here, and then we can figure out what would be the next steps in terms of actually building this into a real library.
Sounds good.
I think before we log out, just to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks, what would be the next steps to get proposal one ready?
I think it's questions in terms of what are the models? Like, what are the models already supported by each of the vendors? Hopefully we can just do an intersect. We put PyTorch with Onyx as the ones that we thought made sense for everybody. So the common models, and then feedback in terms of the overall design. Like, what else are we missing? Is it as simple as pulling the proto buffs? Going another level deep in terms of how this might actually get implemented would be a helpful feedback.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
believe the
probably.
next.
Oh, sorry, Gun.
Yes, sir. I believe the next step would be, once we get the buy-in on a high level, let's dive into just have a proposal for the specific tests and specific models for the test suite. Agreed, and then yeah, just go and implement it. Maybe pull from existing CI tools or examples of example repos of different tools, etc.
I'm wondering whether there is, I don't know, so some low hanging fruit we can tackle to get some traction, even before getting buy-in from everyone else. I don't know, maybe we could start working on specifying the test suite, or yeah, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on that?
So maybe just like getting one out the door.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just wondering that now with the bi-weekly cadence, could be like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Until we
before
agree
the
on
next
next
meeting.
steps.
It's a while. So I guess from your perspective, Adrian, you've been involved with the KSurf team and both your obviously Selden as well. Do you know a model that's off the top of your head, or like a model format that you know works for both of these model deployment servers? Like, do both accept the PyTorch core save model artifact format?
Yeah, I don't think they do. Yeah, I'm not actually sure there is like a single framework that may work on both. I think Triton may also support XGBoost, in which case could be a good option, or otherwise we could also think of different options.
Well,
What about scikit-learn?
I think scikit-learn is only supported on ML server.
yeah, I feel like scikit-learn on Triton would be completely overkill.
Yeah, I think the idea was that Triton is kind of better suited for like deep learning models because it's very efficient. It's very low level.
Well, I don't know if it's deep learning, but it's GPU specific for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like the sort of large models where you want to have a GPU. Yeah, not necessarily deep learning. Yeah, you're right. Whereas ML server is more just pure Python, uh, less efficient, but maybe more data science friendly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, we could think about it. I think XGBoost is maybe supported on Triton. So yeah, that could be one option. But even we could start by having like some simple tests, just checking like the health check endpoints maybe, or something that may not even be dependent on a particular model.
Right, that makes sense. So in other words, like, how do we get the once the URI is passed in here, like running the first health checks test here. Stefan, what do you think about that? Just as like get something into a repo.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can start with just the NIST model, like the canonical. I believe any example, any vendor would have this supported.
Yeah, I may also have a look to see if Triton supports.
This does kind of bring an interesting question of our standard being hard coupled with some framework and model. Like we are currently discussing even without a deep research, and it seems like it's difficult to select a library and a model for testing purposes. And if this standard will maintain in the future, and there potentially will be more tools and more specified tools, it's probably is a risky gamble to just
No, that's not
buy
in
all the
scope.
tests in other scope.
So we talked about this before. We want to have the training code within the GitHub repo as well, so that people can save the model in whatever format that they have. We don't want to be prescriptive on the model artifact format, or even to a certain extent, like what the model is, but we just do need we just need the starting point.
I'm wondering why what if we, instead of providing training code or something like that, we just provide like a very simple mathematical operation, something that you can implement on most frameworks, and then we just say like you need to find out a way to train something or to have something that your model server can load that runs this simple mathematical operation. I don't know, like sum all of the numbers on the inputs or something very small. Because I'm also thinking that going forward, like let's say, like imagine that TensorFlow provides support for the V2 protocol. Like obviously they are not going to want to load a PyTorch model, so we may need to find something that is just decoupled from any model framework, and at the same time something that the test suite knows, so that it can assert that the model server is doing something according to some logic.
Yeah, that does actually make sense. I'm not sure how to approach that problem though, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something like this. I guess the problem with summing all of the numbers is that it doesn't work with non-numerical inputs. But yeah, I don't know, some kind of simple logic.
I don't know if it's a one-way door decision for us to just start with a model framework. I think as we get to that point, we can always iterate on what this is.
Yeah, exactly. It may even be the case that we have just multiple things that can be loaded.
Yeah. Or once we have that base spec, we can always like make it more abstract, like create an equivalent TensorFlow version of it when the time comes. My goal, by the way, is not to create some new model. It's just to take tutorials and examples as much as possible.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no. What I meant is like I mean, if the more complex it gets, even if it's from a tutorial, the harder it would be to replicate the same inputs and outputs on a different framework.
Agreed. That I agree with. Yeah, so like a very simple model, like one layer neural network, like a logarithmic function or something like that. Keep things really simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like we can probably take this offline and keep scribbling down more notes. Yeah, I agree. We need to try and keep velocity as well. But at the same time, I think a lot of us are trying to figure this out and what it means to put pieces all together. So I think it'll be understandable if it takes time, but at the same time, I think we are making progress and we are having the right discussions. Anyone else have anything else to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, maybe in this, like in the offline asynchronous mode, let's start adding those proposals for the first models and the types of the models. Is it going to be just a Python function, one layer neural network, or some canonical like MNIST type of model to be deployed and served? Just let's start adding these ideas. I think that makes sense, but it needs a little bit more thoughts to kind of to put in.
Yep. Okay. I agree.
And
Cool.
what about documentation? Do we have any plans to develop it and add to the website? Any like deadlines?
I don't have a timeline yet. I had a volunteer reach out to me. His name is Dimitri. Oh, I don't even see his name here for the Google sharing. Interesting. I need to follow up. But there's no timeline yet. Hoping that we can get this out in like the next month or so. It's not a lot of work. It's just more of like bandwidth for somebody to just crank this out in terms of first documentation site and then iterating from there.
All right.
Andre, if you have bandwidth and you're interested in this, definitely would love to collaborate with you.
All right.
Okay, cool. Thanks everybody. See you.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.